Start with no, Mike. It isn't 7 months ago. They're going after Kavanaugh again. Like, this is really weird again.
And by the way, the person going after Kavanaugh is Max Steyer, who is from Yale. His last name is Steyer.
That whole Yale thing.
He was a legal advisor for a guy you might have heard of him by the name of President Bill Clinton.
Yes. And
nothing to see here, though.
And the New York Times people that wrote this book waited till the end of the book to write, oh, yeah, he's also associated with Bill Clinton. Well, you'll see. Let's just play. Let me show you what's going on.
Reporters Kate Kelly and Robin Pogrebin were the toast of the left. Boy, things move fast. Their new book appeared to finish the job that the national media started a year ago and take out Brett Kavanaugh for good. The authors accuse Kavanaugh of committing a kind of sexual assault as a college student more than 30 years ago at Yale. Details were sparse, but it was enough to launch a tsunami of rage from the left. Shouters on the other cable channels immediately denounced Kavanaugh as a gang rapist. Virtually all the leading Democrats running for president demanded that Kavanaugh be impeached and removed from office. And then almost immediately, the story fell apart. Sunday night, the newspaper was forced to make a devastating correction to the piece. In fact, the woman that Kavanaugh supposedly attacked didn't remember anything about the event.
Can I ask you a question? Mm-hmm. We watched it. We watched it on TV. There were people with signs. There were people surrounding entire buildings.
Alyssa Milano sitting behind him.
National news. People were marching in the streets. Did we ever get a protest about Jeffrey Epstein? Did anybody ever once say, this is fucked up, we're really just closing this case, we're really just moving on?
Jeffrey who? I haven't seen anything on the news about him lately.
Why isn't everybody furious about
Everybody
that?
should be furious.
Why aren't people flipping cars over that? This is unbelievable. And
I just tweeted that yesterday in the midst of all this, and I said, just a reminder, Jeffrey Epstein was probably murdered. And that's something that needs to be...
He was murdered so they wouldn't pursue the case any further and find his co-conspirators. And you assholes, you line up wherever the news tells you to go be outraged. They're parrots.
Yep.
People really are cattle.
And again, this is the same centrist to left-leaning Kavanaugh. This isn't like this Republican... Kavanaugh's voted against... a lot of things. He's been the swing vote already and sided with the liberals a lot. So it's not like you have a terrible person in there if you're Democrat.
And just like so many previous stories about Brett Kavanaugh, the whole thing turned out to be a crock. So last night, Kelly and Pogrebin sought refuge on MSNBC. In fact, on a show highly familiar with botched stories. Their explanation: don't blame us, blame our editors.
What? Wait, hold on. Don't blame us, the reporters.
Yeah, don't blame them.
Blame the editors?
Yes. It's those damn editors.
What? By the way, what was just said was the woman that they're saying that Kavanaugh did this to has already come out and says, I don't remember any of this. I don't know what you're talking about.
What happened with that omission that the Times later felt belonged in the piece?
Well, first of all, Lawrence, there was zero intent to mislead anybody about the details of the incident.
In your draft...
But, no, there 100% was intent to mislead because you misled them.
Conspiracy theory.
Oh, you're right. Sorry.
Of the article, did it include those words that have since been added to the article?
It did.
She has a strong nose.
It did. So somewhere in the editing process, those words were trimmed.
Yeah, I mean, I think what happened actually was...
So, hold on. I'm sorry. I got to hear that part again.
These women are shit liars, by the way.
Yeah.
Intent to mislead anybody about the details of the incident.
In your draft of the article, did it include those words that have since been added to the article?
It did.
It did. So
and
somewhere
honestly, do you think the tiger stripe is a good pattern to wear on a national news show?
that have since been added to the article?
It did.
It did. So somewhere in the editing process, those words were trimmed.
Yeah, I mean, I think what happened actually was that, we had her name, and the Times doesn't usually include the name of the victim. And so I think in this case, the editors felt like maybe it was probably
The Times
better
doesn't
to
include the
remove it.
names of victims because when you're smearing people and making up false accusations, it's really hard to chase down the details and corroborate that victim's story.
Oh, this will come up
That's
later.
why you do it. That's why you do what you do.
And in removing her name, they removed the other reference to the fact that she didn't remember it.
So the Times says that they removed the victim's name. They've built this whole story on this victim. And they said during the editorial process, they removed her name, which, fine, let's say you don't want to give out the victim's name.
And also the part where she says it didn't happen.
That's the thing. That part, like, you could still say, but the victim alleges that it never occurred.
Yeah, but you would have had to bring up her name. And
No. You couldn't have done that, even if it's an anonymous victim.
It was in the sentence though. It said, so and so denies this happened, and I couldn't write that sentence unless I said so and so.
Just saying so and so to the victim.
Nah, we just take it all out.
And so
In words, Royce, people got to get through the book.
Here's what happened. They wrote the article. They took it out. Somebody did find out who the victim was, and they were like, "Hey, did this happen?" She's like, "No, what?"
removal of the name, they ended up removing
The whole
what follows
sentence,
it.
yes. And I mean, so I think it was just sort of an editing, done in the haste, in the editing process.
That is a major piece of the story. Like, look, I understand in haste spelling there, the wrong form of there. Like, I get that. Like, in a haste, like, you're typing in. And even still, the New York Times, that's not an excuse. When you're a newspaper, the one thing, your one job is to be able to write properly, correct? So you shouldn't have any mistakes. But even still, I understand, in the haste of editing, we took out the biggest part of the story.
As you know.
Well, actually, that story could be true. The New York Times is not what it used to be. It's perfectly believable that some half-asleep, politically inflamed editor at the paper would blow one of the most important stories of the year. It's not a very impressive news outlet anymore. But a missing line is not the only problem with this story. Watch the treatment the two authors received, of all places, on The View.
This is nuts.
I understand that the woman didn't want her name out publicly. If not, why is her name in the book?
Her name is in the book because...
I'm sorry, but we contrast here. The New York Times takes out the name of the victim because we're going to be good. Cool. Hey, then why is her name in the book?
Her name is in the book because we think it's relevant information and we think it's accurate. And we know that her name was provided to members of the Senate and the FBI by a witness named Max Steyer, who is a good governance activist in Washington, who's a respected figure. And he had provided this name. The name is in documents. It's in a letter. Right? He did at one point, I understand, do work for Williams and Connolly.
Why wasn't that in the piece? Because that is, if we're talking about credibility.
Why are the women of The View going harder than...
Am I right? This is the same thing I'm saying.
I'm like, oh.
And I hate the women of The View. McCain, all of them. I hate all of them. But you're right. They're going, but wait a second. Like, you know what came out on this? Because they're usually politically biased. But I think, sometimes when you have a natural reaction and you just say something, like if you were having that and it sounds so crazy, you just go, oh, wait, hold on, wow, what? Wait, but why was it in the book, though?
And the name is in
They're
documents.
going to have to wheel all of these women from The View and these news anchors into like a storage room like in Westworld.
Yeah.
Because they're all going to break.
They are breaking
eventually.
already. They're breaking already.
We need new ones. Just wheel out all new ones.
It's in a letter. Right? He did at one point, I understand, do work for Williams and Connolly.
Why wasn't that in the piece? Because that is, if we're talking about credibility.
Right. I understand it's relevant background. In this case, it was a very short mention, and we only talked in brief terms about what he's doing right now. So we didn't see all of that context to be necessary.
Because you are framing a story to make it to by the way, this story is only a story because, like she even said, she's friends with somebody in the Senate or in the Senate committee, and they said, look, we need to come after this Kavanaugh guy again. Can you write something about this? And they did it because that's what they do. That's what they do. They go, oh, sure, yeah, boss, you got it. They wrote the story. And then any reporter, any real reporter would be fired immediately. Can you imagine what... I mean this, Mike, even in the 90s, walking up to a fucking, let's say the Boston Globe, walking up to the Boston Globe with a story with redacted information, with the victim saying it didn't happen and going, first page news. You'd be like, you're fired. You're fucking fired. Get out of here. We can't run this. This isn't BuzzFeed.
But I understand why you're bringing it up, and I think it's fair.
Just a short mention. Of course, it's the critical claim in the story/book.
Okay, well, yeah, there you go.
Oh, we left out some context. Well, it turns out some people think it's relevant when a character-destroying smear comes from political activists rather than from, say, ordinary citizens. You ought to be able to know that when you're reading the piece. The Times disagrees, though. They don't think you have a right to that context. Of course, these are also the people who took the Trump dossier seriously and buried the context in that. And, in some ways, it's a shame that Kelly and Pogrebin bungled their story so badly, because the book actually has some interesting revelations in it, assuming they're true. For example, they were the first reporters to get an on-the-record statement from Leland Kaiser. That's the friend of Christine Blasey Ford, who supposedly could corroborate her story of being assaulted, but in the end did not corroborate it. Why didn't she? Well, Kaiser told the authors that she had, quote, no confidence in Blasey Ford's story.
Do you know what it is to try to write? Honestly, I don't feel, in a normal world, you still feel bad for these reporters, but I don't, because I think they are fucking pure evil, these New York Times reporters. They're 100% just trying to destroy this country piece by piece. That's what they're doing. But you know what it is to try to do a hit piece and in turn exonerate the guy you're doing a hit piece on?
Everybody
and still try to
going,
sell it like a hit piece?
Oh, no, that didn't happen.
Everybody in this book is saying no.
But it says here that you said you were brutally gang raped by the Supreme Court justice.
I was.
You never said that, and it never happened.
Never happened. I've never even met him.
I've never even met the person that you're saying said this. So I don't.
That's not something the left wants you to hear, so of course the authors downplayed that and buried it at the very end of the book. Really? Seems like the lead, but no. They downplayed it. They also downplayed another telling fact pattern, which is just how far the left was willing to go to destroy Kavanaugh last year. Molly Hemingway and Carrie Severino also wrote a book on the subject. It's called Justice on Trial, and they reported that Leland Kaiser faced sustained pressure from the left to change her story, to lie, and support Blasey Ford's account. Kelly and Pogrebin found out what exactly that pressure was. They got text messages in which Blasey Ford's allies discussed defaming Leland Kaiser, who's a suburban mom outside D.C., as a drug addict. Kaiser confirmed that this happened, as she told the two reporters, quote, I was told behind the scenes that certain things could be spread about me if I didn't comply.
This is extortion. This is
This isn't reporting.
This is illegal.
This is blackmail. It's illegal. This is, holy shit, dude. What happened? Let me tell you something. Fucking say the 90s and shit. And I was a big proponent of the media. I'm like, we need to have a media. We have to hold people accountable, right? There needs to be some sort of system when you could hold people accountable that are in power. Now they're just blackmailing victims and going, hey, you better, or we're going to call you a drug addict.
I think they've always been doing it. It's just,
You think so? You think it's just more transparent now?
Yeah. It's hard to. It's a bunch of spurgs all over the place that can catch you in a lie. People are more afraid to lie now.
This is insane.
Now, that's an interesting story. Far more relevant than some unsupported gossip from a decades-old dorm party. It just happened last year. The problem with it, though, is that the story, the truth of it, makes the activist left look like ruthless fascists. Why? Because they kind of are. So the New York Times suppressed that. They didn't want you to know. And you should know that. It was just...
Fucking Tucker's the only guy I like on that entire network anymore. The only guy I like on the entire network anymore.
Formerly on that network. He won't be there forever.
You don't think so?
Nah, they're going to get rid of him.
But he has he's still the second highest rated show on the network.
But eventually he's going to say something out of fucking turn. He's going to do something out of pocket and they're going to get sick of his shit. That's what's going to happen.
Like the Rogan, there's a small group of people.
Yeah, Tucker has fuck you money. What is he? Eventually he's going to go, this is gay. This is really gay.
You think so?
Yeah, one day he's just going to go, yeah, don't worry. I won't say that when I go on the air.
But you think he'll go out? But you think he'll go out like a G? I in my heart, I like to think he goes out like a G. He just live one day without telling anybody.
Yeah, no, it would be, they'd cover it up, though. It would be like you just read an article about Tucker Carlson's missing final episode.
You're right.
The episode of Tucker that nobody ever saw, never saw the light of day.
Captain Knott's $15. Epstein update. Jeffrey Epstein was seen in the parking lot of College Park Public Swimming Pool in Elizabeth Avenue. He's swimming. He was swinging a FTP's chain against 3 young youths wielding rusty razor blades. The leader was known as Corn Pop and was a serial fanatic. All right, well, we'll keep an eye out. We'll keep an eye out for Corn Pop. For old Corn Pop.